Hello students, welcome to the second part of our first chapter of history, the rise of nationalism in Europe. In this part, we are going to learn the next important subtopic of the chapter, that is the making of nationalism in Europe. So let's start. If you look at the map of mid-18th century Europe, you'll find that there were no nation states as we know them today. Like what we know today as Germany and what we know today as Italy were not as we know them today. These nations were divided into kingdoms, duchies, and cantons, whose rulers had their autonomous territories. So different kings used to rule the various small parts of these countries. And the people residing here did not see themselves as sharing a collective identity or a common culture. Like they spoke different languages and they even belonged to different ethnic groups. So our question is that how did nationalism and the idea of nation state emerge in such conditions of Europe? So first of all, let's go through the constituent parts of the society. It means how the society was divided during this mid-18th century Europe. Aristocracy and the new middle class. So first we have the upper class, and the members of this class were known as aristocrats. They were the most dominant group of Europe, and though they were numerically small in number, it means they formed the minority of the people, but they had power and they were dominant. They owned large country estates and townhouses, and they were mostly connected by marriage ties. It means their family were often connected by marriage ties, and most of them even spoke French. Why French? French for the purposes of diplomacy, and as they lived in higher society, they used to speak French. So this powerful aristocracy was numerically a small group. So where was the majority? The majority of the people formed the lower class, and majority of the people working in the lower class were peasants, and they were landless and worked as serfs in the fields. So what happened after this mid-18th century? In western and some central parts of Europe, industrialization increased and trade also increased, and this increase in trade and production, industrial production, meant the growth of towns and emergence of commercial classes. So as the formation of industries increased after the mid-18th century Europe, a commercial class came into being. So new social groups also came into being, like a working class population and middle class made up of industrialists, businessmen, and professionals. So they were all educated and liberal middle classes. So this was the class, the new middle class, which was educated and mainly comprised of the industrialists and businessmen and professionals. So they were the ones who emphasized the idea of formation of nation states and put forward the idea of abolition of aristocratic privileges, and suddenly they gained popularity after mid-18th century Europe. So another term we have learnt is of liberalism. So what do we actually mean by liberal, or what does liberalism stand for? So the term liberalism is derived from a Latin word which means liber, which means being free. So Latin liber is a Latin word and its meaning is being free. So let's see what were the ideas that were supported by liberals, or what did their ideas stand for in various aspects of the society. When we talk about the social aspect of liberalism, liberalism stood for the end of autocracy and clerical privileges. They wanted to completely destroy all the privileges given by birth to do a part of their society. Then they also wanted freedom of individual and equality before the law, and they also demanded the freedom of press. Now when we talk about the political aspect of liberalism, it stood for the formation of government by consent, constitution, and a representative parliament. They also wanted inviolability of private property, But when we talked about equality before the law, it necessarily does not mean, or it did not necessarily stand for universal suffrage. Suffrage, you might be knowing, suffrage is the right to vote. So equality before the law didn't actually mean universal suffrage, because liberals, these are the ideas of liberals we are talking about. So liberals didn't want to give vote to women and non-propertied men. Women and non-propertied men were denied the right to vote as per the ideas of liberals. They only wanted to give the vote to propertied men who owned some property. So men without property and all women were excluded from the political rights. And when we talk about the economic aspect of liberalism, it stood for the freedom of markets, abolition of restriction of movement of goods. It means the movement of goods across various parts of Europe was restricted to some extent. So the liberals wanted to abolish this restriction, and they also wanted uniform duties, weights and measures. So actually during mid-18th century, Europe was divided into small kingdoms, duchies or cantons that we read in the first slide. So each and every small kingdom had its own currency, had its own weights and measures. So some businessmen or people belonging to the commercial classes actually found it difficult to continue their business and trade across various other parts, because each and every time they had to change their currency, they had to change the weights and measures. Let's see, for example, we have L, that is the measure of cloth which was used in 18th century in Europe. So what was L? L was a measure of cloth, and in each region of Europe it stood for different length. It's the measure of cloth, it means it would be used to measure some length of cloth. So if you buy an L, or if you ask for an L piece of cloth in Frankfurt, you would get 54.7 centimeter. And if you ask for the same L in Mainz, and remember that all these places are not very far from each other, they are quite close. So if you move from Frankfurt to Mainz and ask for the same L piece of cloth, you'll get 55.1 centimeter. If you reach Nuremberg, you get 65.6, and in Freiburg you get the same L for 53.5 centimeter of cloth. So such conditions were viewed as obstacles to economic exchange. So the commercial classes saw this as an obstacle to the economic exchange which they had to carry to continue their trade across various parts. So they argued that they wanted to create a uniform economic territory, allowing the unhindered movement of goods, people and capital. So they wanted to unify the various weights, measures and currencies all across Europe. So finally they found a solution for this, and the solution was Zollverein. This is a very important name, and this question is being asked for 3 marks. What do you mean by Zollverein? Who initiated Zollverein? And what were the actions taken by formation of this custom union? So Zollverein was a customs union which was formed in 1834, and it was formed at the initiative of Prussia. It means Prussia was the one to head or to lead this Zollverein, or put forward the idea of Zollverein. So it was formed at the initiative of Prussia. So what did Zollverein do? According to this union, it abolished tariff barriers all across Europe, and it reduced the number of currencies from over 30 to 2. It means we read that Napoleon was ruling under 39 confederations of Europe. So all across these 39 confederations, they had more than 30. They had more than 30 measures, weights and currencies across Europe. So this Zollverein decreased 30 number of currencies to only 2. So this was the action taken by Zollverein, and this slowly helped the commercial classes and for their smooth motion of or movement of goods, and their economic exchange also started happening easily. So this union abolished tariff barriers and reduced the number of currencies from over 30 to 2. So a wave of economic nationalism strengthened the wider nationalist sentiment growing at that time. So such types of unions that were being formed actually were unifying the nationalist sentiments all across Europe. So this was our second part. In the next part, we'll be learning about a new conservatism that was formed after 1815. So at last we left over Napoleon, the defeat of Napoleon. So what happened after Napoleon's rule, we'll be studying in the next part of this video. Thank you.